Hi and welcome to video 14. On today's agenda is convergence and cross-country variation. How complicated does that sound? But it's not. It's just like so much maths and, calculus and total theory that doesn't exist in the real world. So we start off by looking at the contribution of balanced growth rate, which we touched upon last video, and I showed you the equations. So we have more equations to do with this. No. Side note, someone really wants a strawberry. If we use a Cobb-Douglas function for our output, we have two powers, 1 minus alpha and alpha, because collectively they'll add up to 1. And then we can manipulate this equation by adding growth to every aspect of it, so it's in terms of growth rate. So remember last time that we learned something called the Solow model, so there's also something called the Solow Residual. And this is the residual between the actual GDP growth and growth of capital and labor. That gap is because of technological progress, that residual, because what capital and labor will do will only be amplified with tech progress. But we can actually modify Solow to include human capital, which is where our skills from our workers are separated from the tech progress, because usually you think your tech progress is due to human skills, but here there are also other separate skills that won't account for tech progress. Tech progress is still booming and human capital might also be increasing in another direction. And of course, we do have an equation for human capital. In this case, our U is the amount of time spent acquiring the human capital. Human capital is just skills, so the U would basically be education. And that little squiggly sign next to the U represents a constant in which you sub in a value, which basically tells you how the education will affect the human capital. So for example, if the squiggly is 0.1, that means that every extra year that you have of education will increase your human capital by 10%. Of course, as always, we can also find what the per worker terms are to then find the steady state. So it would be done like this. And remember, if you struggle with the calculus side of things, you can book in tutoring with me and we go through all of it so you can carry out calculations similar. So one of the key growth rate equations that we're going to look at now is the GA, and that's basically the growth of capital accumulation. So growth of how much capital you have is just capital accumulation, like how much am I hoarding? And again, this is an equation we can rearrange to imply this. And the relationship that this shows us is that human capital doesn't affect the steady state, but it does influence the output per worker. Because if you have more skills, you know what you're doing better, or you can find better ways of doing things, and you know how it all works. So therefore your output per hour, per what you do, is going to be better. So study up. And that's all for now. So we will have a look next video into the open economy. Finally, we're going to open things up to the rest of the world. And remember, you can book in one-on-one tutoring sessions with me. Just read below how to do it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Yeah? Come back.